Welcome to Dr. Lottie's Science with Soul, the podcast that transcends the boundaries between science and spirituality. Prepare to be uplifted, transformed, and awakened to create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually by bridging the gap between science and soul. Welcome to Dr. Lottie's Science with Soul. Today's guest is Irene Weinberg, and she's the author of the acclaimed book, They Serve Bagels in Heaven, which shares her transformative journey through a profound car accident and its aftermath. Her international award-winning podcast, Grief and Rebirth, Finding the Joy in Life, ranks in the top 2% globally, featuring interviews with grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and inspiring stories of resilience. Her new anthology, Good to the Last Drop, Embracing Your Life's Third Chapter, offers inspiring, uplifting tales of overcoming loss and challenges later in life, advocating for living life's third chapter fully with love, kindness, and purpose. Welcome, Irene. It's such an honor to have you as a guest today.
I could not be more thrilled, Lottie. You and I have such a wonderful relationship. You've interviewed me, I've interviewed you on our podcast and all, and I was so flattered when you wanted me to come today to hear my story.
Right, and you have such a great story. I can't wait to dive into this. So, start by telling us, what was your life like before you had your spiritual awakening?
I was married to my second husband, the love of my life, for about 18 years, and we did not believe in spirituality. We were very, very traditional Jewish people. If we visited a grave, our tradition said, leave a stone on the grave, say your prayers. Did anyone hear me? I had no idea. And I had a sister-in-law who was very, very spiritual, and we thought she was cuckoo. We were hardly talking to her because she was crazy, and feeling sorry for my husband's brother who had married her because he's married to a loon. And what happened was the surprise was on me, because one day Saul and I were married, was 17 years easily, and going on 18. And I was one day washing dishes at my kitchen sink, and Saul was watching a football game on TV, where if anyone listening to us can tell, I'm from New Jersey, I'm sure. And uh, all of a sudden, which I guess, Lottie, it might be considered meditative, when you're washing dishes, you're really not thinking. And all of a sudden, this thought that was not my thought dropped into my head. And the thought said to me, Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And I kind of looked around and I said, what the heck am I thinking? This is crazy. And I filled a glass of water, and I took it to him watching the game. I kissed the top of his head, and I proceeded to put it out of my head, except that you never forget something like that. And 2 months later, we were skiers, Lottie, and we had a ski house in the Catskills in upstate New York. And 2 months later, we were coming home from our weekend at the Catskills, in the Catskills skiing, and we were on the road about an hour and a half, going 72 miles an hour, and the car suddenly went into a huge swerve. And I looked over and I saw that my husband was sound asleep at the wheel. And I called out to him, I said, Saul, and he woke up and he went to pull the car out of the swerve. But instead of riding the car, we started to flip for the first of 4 flips into the air. And as we took off the first time, and I'm small, so I'm petite, which I think actually kind of saved my life, because I pulled myself into a little ball as the car took off. And the first thing that happened to me was I got a second message immediately. And the message said, he's not going to make it. You are. Well, we flip up and we hit again, and we flip up again. And I suddenly left my body. And I ended up like in darkness, but I didn't know what was going on. It was just very black around me, but it was weird. I knew I was out of my body. And as if you were looking at a clock, like from 10 of to 10 after, like 10 of in the flip, I left, and about 10 after in the flip, I came back into my body. I've been told that at that moment I accompanied Saul to the portal to the other side. And I think that I got, because there's no time there, I think that I got my walking orders or something. I was whatever was seated to be in me, because as I entered my body again, we hit it very hard again, and we flipped up in the air a third time, and then we flipped up in the air a fourth time, Lottie, and I ended up with Saul upside down on the side of a ravine by the New York State Thruway. The accident was so bad that we held up traffic on the Thruway for 2.5 hours, and I'm looking at my husband, and I don't know yet that I am in for 4 major surgeries and whatever happened to me, but I'm looking at my husband and I said, "Saulie, are you okay?" And I saw that I was by the shell of my husband. I saw, like I had been told, he was gone. And I got in that moment that there is more, that I got the message. Immediately I remembered back to Saul has to go. Many lessons will be learned from his death. And I thought, holy moly, and he must be here, and there's so much going on. And with that, I saw a helicopter land with 3 EMTs, jumped out of the helicopter, and they started rocking my car. And I was conscious through everything. I did not know yet about my physical injuries. And they were rocking the car, and they got it right side up on the road. And one of them put his hands through the shattered window of my car. And by the way, there were still pieces of my car on the road 6 months later. That's how bad it was. And he put his hands through the shattered window of my car. I'll never forget it. Undid my seatbelt, flipped me around, and started pulling me by my shoulders through the window of my car. And as he did that, Lottie, a male voice. Now, remember, I don't get these messages. I thought this was all crazy, right? An actual male voice boomed into my head, and it said, "Be loving and kind to everyone," as they laid me on the side of the road. Well, I don't know about you, but that would tend to change your cells as they're multiplying. I mean, I'm like, whoa, what? And I didn't have time to like go into shock or something. In a way, the fact that I got that message 2 months earlier told me, and I also got the message, "He's not going to make it, you are." It told me that something was definitely up, but I didn't know what it was. And it changed me so in the moment that instead of crying for myself and carrying on like would be a normal thing to do, I started blessing everyone who came near me. "What's your name? I know it's the week before Christmas. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm so grateful." They're loading me into the helicopter, and they're tying a tourniquet around my ankle because they're telling me I have a torn artery in the bottom of my foot and all these different things going on. And they put me in the helicopter, and I'm thanking everyone. I get flown to an emergency trauma center. And I was given a directive in my mind to be loving and kind to everyone. So there I am. And when they came to me, the doctor came to me and he said to me, "I need to tell you that your husband is gone." Instead of screaming for myself, I said, "I know, doc, and I'm the luckiest woman in the world that I had this man in my life for the years that I did." And then my stepdaughter, who I had custody of both of my stepchildren, that's a whole other interview, Lottie. But I had custody of my 2 teenage stepchildren, and I had a natural born son. My stepdaughter came, and when she found out that her father was gone, she literally fainted as they were putting needles in my foot to start to stitch me together. And she fainted. And as the nurses picked her up, and what I said to her was, "Sandy, I will always love you and I will never hurt you." And because I had "be loving and kind" in my head. And she said, "I know." And she ran out of the operating room to tell her husband. And the bottom line of the way I behaved was that I got a call from the assistant to the surgeon 3 months later. And she said, I just need to tell you that you changed lives in the emergency room that night. We had never seen anyone respond, and we've seen it all on the throughway. We never saw anyone respond the way you did. And I said, Trish, I had a spiritual awakening that knocked my socks off. I mean, it just changed my life, changed the way I view everything in that moment. So you take me back though, right? I have the surgery. I'm in the hospital for 3 days. All these things, and the sister-in-law, who I thought was cuckoo, comes to visit me, and she immediately sees my entire aura has changed. And she immediately sees this huge change in me. And now she's the one person who I can talk about that this amazing thing happened to me. So I know something's up. I have 2 blood transfusions. I have 19 stitches in the bottom of my foot. I don't know yet that I'm in for shoulder surgery, knee surgery, eye surgery over 2 years. I'm in a wheelchair. They bring me home, and all this other drama, of course, goes on. And I'm in grieving hell, and all of this kind of thing is going on. But I know something is up, and I don't know what it is. And 6 weeks after the accident, I got a call from my dry cleaner, because if you know me for 2 minutes, you know I talk to everybody. So I would bring in my dry cleaning and we'd chat about whatever. And he called me and said, Irene, and I was just getting out of my wheelchair. He said, I don't usually tell this story to anybody, but 8 years ago, my wife and I lost our son to a drug overdose, and we never told anybody about it. And he said, we went to grief counselors and social workers and all these people. No one could help us. We were in such despair. He said, then someone told us the soul goes on to the other side. He said, and we've seen these mediums. He said, and oh my, our son came through this way and that way and da-da. He said, and we're going to be seeing a guy who's going to be very famous one day. He's new, and we're going to see him in about 2 weeks. And if you want to go with us, you can come. Lottie, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I knew something was up. I ran to the metaphysical bookstore. I'm telling you this for a reason.
Yeah.
I ran to a metaphysical bookstore, and James Van Pry had just come out with his book, Talking to Heaven. I studied it like I was reading a I didn't know what was up or whatever. And 2 weeks later, I found myself walking with my and I'm going to tell you for a reason. I drove my car 5 towns away, left it at my dry cleaner's home, got in his car, and he drove me to a hotel in another town, another 5 towns away. So my car was at my dry cleaner's home. And we walk in, and this medium said to me, I don't even want to know your name. Go upstairs. I'll see you in a little while. And I went upstairs, and the medium was John Edward. Before he was famous, I was with my dry cleaner. Didn't even cost me anything, which is really amazing in those days. But, my dry cleaner brought me in. He had done a video for John Edward or something. And it was like Saul waited to have me witness other people coming through and getting amazing messages. And suddenly John Edwards said, I'm hearing from a guy, he's talking about Dr. Pepper. Does anyone relate? Now, this was before voice recorders. This is about 25 years ago. So all of a sudden I elbowed my dry cleaner and I said, oh my God, Joel, it's Saul, start writing. And what had happened was 15 years before he met me, Saul's brother, who was an advertising executive on Madison Avenue in New York City, had put Saul's name in a Dr. Pepper commercial. That it's coming east from California. Let's talk to the man in the street, of all things, Lottie, not Joe Smith, John Doe, Saul Weinberg, about what he thinks about Dr. Pepper. So Saul used to laugh about this all the time. How could John Edward possibly know this? Then 40 minutes worth of messages. He's telling me you're driving his favorite car with Saul Z on the license plate. This is the license plate. How could John Edward possibly know that? My husband was a real estate developer in Hoboken, New Jersey, where Frank Sinatra was born. And the kids there, when he sold them condos, loved him so much they used to call him Uncle Saulsy. So we had Saulsy on there was no way. And then he said he also said all this information, the names of each of Saul's kids, of my son. He died in a different state than where he lived. You're wearing his skier charm under your blouse, on and on and on with unbelievable information. And John Edward literally said, Saul was like going on and on. I mean, filled with information. And John Edwards said, how long is this guy on the other side? I don't know if he would say that today. And I said, 2 months. He said, this is a very evolved soul. This guy is so articulate. This guy's been around the block a lot, blah, blah, blah. So Lottie, I still can't tell anyone that this has happened to me because like I was, they would think I was cuckoo. So I started secretively going to other mediums. And now I get these other messages. He described his toast to me through someone, the first way he kissed me, the first meal I ever made. And on, honey, it's me, it's me, it's me. And they started telling me that there was a divine plan, that we had been soulmates for many lifetimes, that we planned that we were both going to be like light workers in this lifetime. And if certain things didn't work out, Saul might have to leave early and we would work together across the veil. Huh? But this is what one person after another. And then I was guided to someone who channeled Saul for my first book about the spiritual awakening called They Serve Bagels in Heaven. And I worked and how did I know this was real? Because Lottie, I was totally skeptical still until this person channeling. Lottie, do you channel in languages at all?
It doesn't matter
When you,
it doesn't matter what language the spirit is or speaks originally. Yeah. I mean, it just comes through in because I read a lot of it is images for me. So I get a lot of images. So the language doesn't really matter.
Okay. So, but what convinced me with this, I mean, I think you're amazing, but what convinced me with this was we were channeling and she would sit at her computer and I'd ask a question and this Saul would channel right through her. It would be like water and she'd be writing down the information. And one day she said, he's telling me you've had a lot of past lives. And in fact, one of them, he says, you were a little boy in ancient Israel. And I've been told I've had many different lives as a boy, as a girl, in different religions and all this. But in this particular lifetime, I was a little boy in ancient Israel, and Saul was my rabbi, and I was his student in that lifetime. And she said, I'm trying to get your name and his name in the lifetime, and I'm having a really hard time. Well, Lottie, she was Methodist. She had never heard a word of Hebrew in her life. And she said, he keeps saying you were a good little boy. And I'm getting a weird name. It sounds like Yeled Tov. I said, oh my goodness. Yeled Tov is Hebrew for a good little boy.
Oh.
And that's how I knew that I was getting really honest, good information. And then I proceeded to ask Saul, what happens with evil over there? What happens with soulmates? What goes on? What was it like for you to cross over? And I was getting all this information. And wove it into my first book. And then I thought I was done, Lottie. Had the book out there and I was going to different things and people were loving the book and it was getting wonderful response and helping people. Then one day I was sitting at my desk where I am now, and suddenly the word podcast came into my head. I'm a baby boomer. I said, what's a podcast? I had no idea. So I asked somebody, what's a podcast? I just heard the word podcast and I don't get messages like that. And she said, oh, I can help you do that. Now I thought to myself, well, they're telling me I'm supposed to do a podcast. Who am I supposed to interview? And I decided part of my story was when they pulled me out of the car, not only did I get that voice in my head, but on the earth plane, my husband was buried on my son's 21st birthday. On the earth plane, I said to myself, I have to do whatever I need to do to heal from this and move forward because I have to teach my son that you can get hit by a grenade in life and keep going. So immediately, I was a big believer in therapy and all that. Immediately, I started seeing a life transition coach. Mediums were saving my life with the way Saul was coming through. I started working with an energy healer. Nobody in my world knew this, but suddenly I'm open to all of this. I said, you know what? I'm going to interview grief and trauma specialists healers, mediums, and like me, people who have been through tremendously tough things in life, but they are working to heal themselves and move forward. So I called the podcast, as you know, because you've been interviewed on it. We had a wonderful interview, Grief and Rebirth, Finding the Joy in Life. And then I thought I was done. And then another day came along and I'm doing my thing. And all of a sudden, I was talking to a medium and she said, I'm getting a message. You're supposed to write another book. And that's a whole other story. And yes, I wrote this other book. So this has all Lottie been, and every single thing that I've done is because I now believe, and I know I'm getting messages and I'm on a team, and it has nothing to do with my ego. It's all about Saul's helping me, and we are trying, and it's helping a lot of people, as I know you are also. People are, I have some people who listen to my podcast. It's like, do I have a soul? And I have other people who listen and they're very sophisticated and they want to pick up more information. So that's basically what's going on with me. Not boring. And the other thing not boring. And the other thing I really want to say is, and I tell people this, and I'm happy to talk about it, when they pulled me out of the car and I heard be loving and kind to everyone, you know what? I took that to mean me too. And I had never cherished myself like that. I had a very dysfunctional childhood. Everything was being a people pleaser, taking care of everyone else. I was at the bottom of the list. But once Saul died and I was getting, or he was on the other side, I should say, transitioned, and I was getting all of these messages and all, I thought, I have to take good care of myself. I have a job to do over here. He's working with me. And I have now 3 beautiful grandsons. And I'm like, I need to take care of myself to be present in their lives and all. So that also changed. It changed my whole, I say change the angle on the dangle, is to change my whole attitude about life, totally turn things upside down for me. And it's such a blessing. I would have never met Lottie if I hadn't started to do this. I've met so many wonderful, amazing people who are making such an incredible difference in the world. I really feel very blessed to be doing this.
Yeah, talk about a divine plan.
Yes,
Right.
and I'm very aware of it, and I feel very, very fortunate that I know that I'm part of a divine plan. Um, I know I'm going to see my husband again. I am not afraid of dying. At all. My passion is about staying healthy and vibrant as long as I can to help as many people as I can and be here. And it's not, like I said, it's not, I feel very humble about it. I feel very, very blessed in many ways. And I think that that is one of the things that keeps me perky and going, because you and I, we have a purpose, we have a mission. We're
Right.
helping people.
Mm-hmm. And we had to be sort of woken up a little bit through these traumatic experiences, right? Other people, they also have a purpose and they also have a divine plan, right? All the listeners out there, but it might not be as obvious to them what that plan is or what their mission is and why they're here. So for us, it's, we're blessed in that way, in that we had these experiences that really changed our life completely, right? And so most people just go through life and they don't have these traumatic experiences that put them on a different course, right? But they all have a purpose and they all have a mission too. It's just not written on the wall the same way.
That's true. I also say, though, you and I got blessed in the way that we were given choice. We could have said no to whatever we were getting,
Right.
and we chose to move forward. And I think that other people in their lives, as they listen to you and they listen to your podcast and what you're teaching, and for me with my podcast and what's going on here, we're helping them to become more conscious, to be aware in their lives that there's more, that they can make better choices for themselves. They can choose to heal. They can choose to unload their backpacks of misery. They can choose to evolve and move forward. And I'm really thrilled to be able to provide people for them to get to know, who can help them to know that they can choose differently in their lives and they can become conscious as to what's going on. I was not a conscious person before the accident. I was not. I'm the first one to say that. Did my actions or have any meaning or significance other than my own value system or whatever? But now I know that
Yeah. Do you
that
think
is
that, do you think that, what if you had become spiritual? Do you think that accident would still have happened, or do you think there's somehow different paths that, you didn't become spiritual, you didn't change your life. So plan B, now we got to do the accident. And this is the second, what I'm saying, in order for
yeah,
that to sort of take place.
no. I know for a fact that it was planned from when we came in, because I when I first was dating Saul, I was curious and I knew someone who was an astrologer. Not that I was that spiritual, but I said, let me see what she's got to say. I don't know. I'm an Aquarian. Let's see. She's got to say something about that. And she literally did a chart for me. And she said, it's many years away, but you and Saul are going to die together in a car accident. Okay. So this was obviously something. I mean, and I thought, oh yeah, ha ha ha. Okay, there goes astrology. That's it for me. And now all these years
Yeah.
later, I could have died, but
Mhm.
I got given a different path.
Right. Yeah, it is fascinating because I've been told too my near-death experience is in my astrological chart. The sun is in the exact same position it was the day I was born, and all these different things that it was to remind me of what I was here, what my purpose on life was in this incarnation, which was to work spiritually with people in one way or another, and combination of it all, right? But it's
Yes.
really interesting. I mean, I didn't learn that until this past year. Somebody told me, "Oh yeah, that's in your chart. You can see it very clearly." So it's really interesting. I mean, that astrological chart is kind of like a movie script in a way. It's just that as normal people that haven't studied astrology for years, we don't really know how to interpret all of that.
Right. I mean, what does Mars have to do with what I'm doing in my life or whatever that is? And that was usually, and that was my attitude when I had my chart done. And then she made that funky prediction from my chart. And how, how do you like it happened? And I almost died that night. But obviously, Spirit had another plan for me. And Lottie, I really did leave my body. A lot of people say that, they see things or whatever. I knew I was conscious and aware, but I was just surrounded in darkness. And what I think is they probably gave me a little bit of amnesia, because I had to come back. And I think when I got that voice, be loving and kind to everyone, I think that was supposed to click on the script, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that what we see in those scenarios that we experience is meant for that person, and that's why everybody has a different experience. It doesn't matter that you saw something or didn't see something. It's how we are changed as a result of having that experience. That's what matters, not what actually happened during the experience, right? That's really not important. That's only really important for the person to have that experience, but then that's going to change them to become a certain way. Just like I saw the grid, and that's really what I work with today, and ancestral healing, and healing people from whatever ails them. And it's the understanding of the grid, and that's why I had to see the grid, right? Because it makes sense now to me. Oh, that's how it works. That's how we are all interconnected. That's why we're all one. But you read about it in mystical text, and before I didn't really understand. I was like, okay, everybody's one. But now I have such a deep understanding and knowledge what that really means, right? We are so interconnected, and everything is such a divine plan. And you go out your body and then you come back, and it's like they put you back in this little cardboard box. I mean, that's what it feels like. You're
Right,
so
right.
restricted. I mean, this body now. I mean, it's like I lived in a palace, when I was outside having my near-death experience. And then I got back to my, 500 square feet studio, and that's where I'm living now, right? But it's that the vastness of what exists beyond what we really experience when we are in this body, in this three-dimensional world. It's very different, right? But I think that it's very true that they gave you some kind of an amnesia, right? Because that was that was your experience. That's what you needed to experience. They didn't want to tell you all of it. They got the important messages. You heard what was important, right? And I
Right.
think it's fascinating because we all have these very different experiences, but it changes that person in a dramatic way. And that's what matters.
Exactly. And just like you, with your medical background and everything, with exactly what you're doing, I think that I was programmed the way I am because I have such an easy way that I relate to people and talk with people. I think my job, my mission is more about being a bridge to healers and to people who can help people, and helping people to know, if I didn't believe in this and this happened to me, we don't die, we definitely move on. And and how are you behaving on this planet till you get there? Because what do you want your life review to be about, and all of that kind of thing. And I really see myself more as a messenger, um, to send people to people who can help them. And I know a lot of people will contact me and say to me, I found someone on your site, and oh my goodness, this person really resonated with me. I listened to the interview and they're helping me, or whatever. And that, so I always am very grateful when that happens. And I'm sure you've had the same kinds of experiences.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there are times when I feel like I'm a messenger or an activator, right? And helping people activate their own life path or bringing messages in one way or another, right? So then you wrote that the first book was that They Serve Bagels in Heaven. How did that book come about? Was that channeled
Well,
on
that
the
was the
other
one that was
side,
channeled from this
right?
gal who never spoke Hebrew before. And the reason it's called They Serve Bagels in Heaven is that I asked Saul, so what happened when you got there? I mean, what, and he described how he crossed over, and as I'm sure you're going to validate, Lottie, that when people cross over, you get a familiar view from the life you've had, and then you get a more universal view. So his familiar view was that his mother met him on the other side with bagels and coffee. His mother had died when he was 16 years old, and that was what she provided him before he got the much more universal view. And people say to me, so did the coffee come with orange juice and cream cheese and bagels and all that? And I go, anything you want on the other side of anything. But so that happened. And then I was I was talking to a medium, and she said, I'm getting a message for you. And I said, what is that? And she said, they're saying that many people consider you to be a role model for aging well, and they would love you to have a book about people's third chapters in lives. So if you look at our first chapter in life, proverbially or whatever, that it is when we're children, when we're educated, when we're forming our lives. And the second chapter is many of us get married, career, moving through these different things. Now you get all that behind you. You've had your challenges, your difficulties. No one gets out of a lifetime without problems or whatever, how they've chosen to get through it. Now you're in your third chapter. Retirement for most people, what does that look like? Are you going to accept the fact that it's time to get sick and die? Or are you going to take the beauty and wealth of the lessons you've learned and the things that have happened to you, and you're going to make this beautiful new way to leave a legacy? What is your final legacy in that third chapter before you leave your body and you go to the other side? So I chose a bunch of people who I had interviewed who I thought made the grade for the age cut in their third chapters. And I came out, and the book is called Good to the Last Drop, which came to me, and it used to be a very famous slogan from my coffee company. And I thought, well, isn't that what we're all living? We hope to be good to the last drop.
True, true.
And I'm getting a lot of feedback, and I was told to do it, and I did it. Whenever I get guided, I believe, and I have faith, and I go on the guidance. And I'm getting emails. This person's story is life-changing for me. this and this story. Not every story, I'm sure, resonates with every single person, but there's enough stories in there that there's sort of kind of something there for everybody who can relate and understand, wow, I've had problems in my life, but look at what this person went through and look what she's doing with this. And so it's inspiring a lot of people and getting people to think about, I'm pulling up to that end line. What do I want to do with? I mean, one man who contributed to the book, his wife, he's in his 80s. His wife died. He had a massive heart attack. He's in a wheelchair and assisted living. He's not waiting to bye-bye. He's holding meetings and agendas and seminars and all kinds of things about climate change. He used to be a forest ranger in Canada, and his life is so vibrant and full, and he's meeting people and trying to make a difference. So there are a lot of different stories. It's fascinating about how what people went through and what they took from it, and now what they're doing with that last legacy that they're going to leave on the planet. Are you going to leave all those problems that you had in chapters 1 and 2? Is that what you're going to, and a lot of people, that's what they're defined by. Or
Yeah.
you're going to take this wisdom and you're going to take these lessons, and now can you help more other people as your legacy before you take off this time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like an amazing book, and it's so needed, right? Because people go into their third chapter of life, and I tell people, I mean, you have to expect you're going to be 100, because I mean, how many people do you see on social media celebrating a 100th birthday, right? That's nothing now. I mean, it used to be when I was little, right? Because I was born 58, that 50 was a big birthday, right? Remember my dad turning 50. I was like, wow, he's so old. I was 10. So, and it was such a different time, and everybody had a big party. He took the day off from work. All our friends came and gave him flowers and presents. It was a big deal. Like, you were healthy and vibrant, and you were 50 years old. It was 1968. So, and that's very different. I mean, I think that we look what we used to celebrate as 50, that's kind of 80 now. So, right? And
That's
then
right.
so you're 50, you made it into 70, you're really old, but now it's 80 is like the new 50, and then you make it into 100. Wow, you made it.
Right.
It's very different. And our medical technology and the way we're moving forward, especially for, things like heart attack and things, trauma kind of medical issues, we're really good at those, right? The Western medicine. So you kind of have to expect you're going to be 100. So what are you going to do with that whole chapter of your life? No?
All right. And the other thing I read, and you can tell me, Dottie, if you agree with this or not, because I think you would know better than I, is I keep reading that there's a theory today that many people get dementia because they're not learning new things and using their brain, just like you need to work all the parts of your body to stay alert, vibrant, alive, right? So a lot of people, they're not using this. And I say those who are going into their third chapters, thinking about how they're going to create a legacy and what they're doing with their lives, they're learning new things. They're meeting new people. They're forming new synapses or whatever that is, which provides you with a healthier, longer life, I would think.
Right. I mean, all different things play a role. And so when we read articles and research that are done on a specific area that was paid for by somebody, right? Somebody's got to pay for the research, which is usually pharmaceutical companies. So the things that we really want to see research on is often not research because there's no money in it. But we know that the brain is neuroplastic, right? And we can create new pathways. Why is it that some people get dementia and other people don't, right? You can get, tangled into, well, these different tau proteins, things that get
Right.
entangled in those people. And you have a genetic predisposition and blah, blah, blah. But the truth is that, I mean, everything is going to play a role. Like, what is your emotional state? Have you been exposed to environmental toxins, right? Do you have a good home life? Are you eating a good diet, or are you living on McDonald's or like other fast foods that might not be so good for you, right? Are you drinking sugary drinks every single day, are you overweight? I mean, all those things are going to play a role. And then on top of it, like you said, are we keeping the brain active? And so I think there's a lot of different puzzle pieces. Why do some people get sick? Why do some people get dementia? Why do some people heal and other people don't? And they do the exact same thing. Why do some people get lung cancer? They smoked for 10 years and quit 30 years ago. They still die of lung cancer. Other people smoke their entire life and they make it into their late 90s and they never get lung cancer, right? We don't know. We don't really know. We know that there are certain things that seem to be, adding to certain things, but we don't really know the truth about it because the body is so complex and so divine. And why is it that some people have these miraculous healings? Right? Why doesn't everybody have a miraculous healing if they do the same thing? They all pray, they all meditate, they all do the same
You're
thing,
absolutely right.
right? But only some of them get to heal. But I think it's very similar as to why do some of us see things when we have a near-death experience and others hear things, and other people probably had a near-death experience, but they don't remember anything. I think it's just way more divine than we can even understand or wrap our brain around, right? Because we're stuck in these little bodies on Earth having this human experience that is, so fun in the end. But it becomes more fun. It's not fun to go through all the difficulties that everybody has difficulties that they're experiencing in their life because that's how we learn and grow. But, in the end, when you understand how divine our existence really is, I mean, it's a quite miraculous. We're all these miracles walking around
True.
thinking that we're not a miracle, but we
You're
really are
right.
a miracle, right?
You're right. Right. Right.
Mhm.
It's so true, Dottie. Lottie, it's so true. And I always think about it that I've been told by many people that we plan our lives before we come in. So maybe somebody plans that they're going to live a long time or they're going to get this illness. I know someone who's had cancer 8 times and he survived all 8 times. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a plan that he had learned from that illness and he was given choice as to how he's going to get through that. Other people's, maybe there's a plan that they're supposed to die earlier in their lives. Why does a little baby sometimes die so early in life? But sometimes they're here just for a short, that's what I've been taught. That's what
Yeah.
I've been told. They're here just for a short
Yeah.
time to teach lessons to the parents in some way or whatever. And then it's time for them to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comforts me to say, well, I don't know what this person's path was
Yeah.
when something happens.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We can't see it until we go to the other side. And then I'm sure everything makes sense. Right? It's like we're like, wow, what wasn't that great? We had such a great time doing all these crazy things. We all played our roles so well, right? I mean, I do think that there is a certain, people we're supposed to meet. I think all the big things specifically, you were supposed to meet your partner. I was supposed to meet my partner. And that's just how it's supposed to be,
And
right? It's like
also
the
the magic,
incarnation.
yeah, and the magical synergies,
Yeah.
Lottie, that happen in our lifetimes. I mean, okay, I was married to the love of my life for all these years, right? Do you know who introduced me to him? My ex-husband. So what was that job about? So I always wonder, like, there must have been some kind of a master plan that as souls we said, okay, I'm signing up for this role and I'll have this part of it or whatever. And then we have choice. Are we paying attention to the signs? Or are we saying that like I once did? That's baloney.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that. Or all of a sudden when you kind of wake up, you go, oh, wait a minute. This step led me to this step, led me to this step. Oh, I'm beginning to understand this now, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's like we're being guided, it's like stepping stones. We just go from one stone across the river, right? We make it to the next one. Look at that. Now all of that makes sense. Now three more stones. But I definitely feel that because you go through different learning cycles in your life where all of a sudden things that didn't make sense 10 years ago now makes perfect sense because you can see what you learned during those often hard times, right? This is typically how we learn. And then we come out on the other side and we become changed. We change as a
Yes.
human. We become somebody different by going through the different hardships in life. And that's what life is really all about.
Isn't that, I mean, this is school, and you go
Yes.
home, and that's home. You go to you transition, and that's home.
Yes.
I personally have ordered a large party with much champagne when I get home.
Uh, no, but it's so true. So true. So I know we're starting to run out of time. So tell us, how can people find your books? They Serve Bagels in Heaven and Good to the Last Drop.
They're on Amazon, everyone. Just go right to Amazon. Good to the Last Drop. They Serve Bagels in Heaven, or Irene Weinberg will get you there. And I have a website. You can get it through my website, ireneweinberg.com, which will also put people in touch with the podcast, or actually the podcast is everywhere, Grief and Rebirth, and all the wherever people get them. And I have a YouTube channel and all of that. So it's very easy to find me, and say hello. Come on and say hi.
And before we end, I'm going to ask you one last question. What do you think is the meaning of life?
I think that the meaning of life is to heal. And when you heal, you find joy. And I think that the reason, and I really do believe that we're here to learn a lot of lessons, and that we have choices that we can heal or not. And we can carry our lifelong backpacks of misery and pain and suffering, or we can heal it. And then we become a joyous role model for those who are in our lives or following us or whatever. And part of being joyful to me is not only being loving and kind to the people in your life, but to you too, because you're as precious as anyone else in your life, and as important.
I love that. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you as a guest today, Irene.
It's always a pleasure to see you, Lottie. Thank you so much.
As we conclude this episode, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your presence within my community. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, comment, like, and share this podcast episode. Join my free newsletter in the show notes and receive new podcast episodes delivered right to your inbox. If you resonate with the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and are motivated to embark on a journey of personal healing, I invite you to connect with me at drlottie.com. Together, we can pave a path towards transformative healing in your own life.